What up, dude, bro? Spider Avenger Miller got a special review today of the Nerf Rival Challenger. The review is actually going to be different today, but then I saw this and then it was available, so had to get it. The Nerf Rival Challenger is Rival's one of their newest blasters, and it is nicknamed the Rival Stryfe, and that's exactly what this thing is. So let's get into it. Included with the Challenger is the blaster itself, the magazine, instruction manual, and balls. If you didn't get a chance to check out my live stream of the blaster, I'll link you to that in the video description, but I'll also give you a little bit of a break for it. Now, that was kind of my first impression. I've had this blaster now for a few days, and I want to give like an actual full-on review of it now. So let's get into it with an external overview. Again, I went over most of this stuff in the live stream, but proper review for today. So up here, we have somewhat of what looks like an N-Strike barrel lug. However, no N-Strike attachments fit this, which is kind of disappointing. Thank you, Hasbro. Down below, we do have a sling loop that can move freely on both sides of the blaster, and on the bottom and on the top, we have not Picatinny rails, Rival rails, which are different than normal N-Strike rails. They can technically fit Nerf attachments, but not perfect. Like, they are not optimized for them at all. And if you're wondering about Rival attachments, Nerf hasn't made Rival attachments since the red dot and the foregrip. Although one complaint I do have is this rail is kind of loosely supported, and it can actually kind of move. We'll get into that in the opinion. Back behind, we do have an unjamming door. You just flick that open. You can get your fingers in there to clear your balls out. I've never had jam with this yet, and that's very convenient if you want to just get your balls out of a jimmy. Down below, we do have a magazine release. It's fully ambidextrous. You strike it with your left hand, or if you actually want to strike it with your middle finger, even though it's a little too far away to reach with that. We'll get into that in my opinion. And what's cool is you can technically grab to drop it. Kinda. Yeah, we'll go over that in my opinion. Included is a new kind of Rival mag. This is their banana mag. It holds 12 rounds, even though we thought it was going to hold 18. I personally kind of like it. I think it looks like Count Dooku's lightsaber, but it is compatible with the other Rival mags. You just have to change the way you hold these, because instead of how they usually go in, they go in backwards. So this is, of course, the one that came with the Pathfinder. It fits in well, as I just drop it. And then, of course, here is a clear Rival mag. This one is a little loose, but they do have a little bit of a compatibility issue, which we'll go over towards the end. But of course, the included one works just fine. Back and behind, we do have the trigger. The trigger pull is a mechanically operated semi-automatic system. It feels very similar to a Stryfe. And one thing I have to give them credit for, the trigger pull is very smooth. I'm quite surprised how smooth it is, and it works a lot like how a Stryfe would, because in the back, it's very hard to see through the jam door, but there is a cool system of somewhat of a pusher that kind of ejects the balls into the flywheels, which I think is really cool, and it leads to a very snappy trigger, and that is, lo and behold. And then, of course, down we do have the rev trigger. The rev trigger is pretty comfortable. It feels similar to a Stryfe, except it doesn't like disappear into the shell like the Stryfe, but different strokes for different folks. And now down to the grip. The grip on this blaster is very comfortable. It's pretty well designed. It can work for a smaller hand and for an older hand. But the blaster is a little bit front heavy, but it's actually mitigated because back behind, this is where the batteries are stored. This takes 8 AA batteries, not 6. 8 will kind of lead to a more higher chrono result, but we'll talk about that towards the end. And back behind, this is where I gotta commend them. We have a sling loop on the back, but we also have a little bit of a carabiner kind of holder, and this we will go over in my opinion because I love this thing. But that's an external overview of the Challenger. Now I will show you it firing. Starting off with the included blue balls. going a little faster, but also using the Pathfinder mag. Of course, I can't have a Stryfe and not tactically finger bang it. Oh boy! And lastly, testing the compatibility with the original ammo with the original mag. I need to go over what happened in that firing demo because this has been a problem that has just recently surfaced. PhoneQuest was the first one that noticed it. Then my buddy Brickosaurus 227 figured it out. So let me explain. The reason why the OG mags didn't work is because in 2018 they actually redesigned their new magazine because it's visible on the Pathfinder mag, and I might botch this, so I will go ahead and link Brickosaurus's live stream in this video's description. But there's new little kind of like teeth or like tabs that are imprinted into these new magazines that aren't in the original ones. And the reason why I say original is because they updated the mags in 2018 with a slightly different design to the point to where, one, you could tell it is a little looser as it goes in, but it is looser, like you could feel it, but also when you're firing it, it kind of tends to kind of slip out just a little bit. There's a joke in there. But that's why with these kind of mags, you have to hold it. But if you're wondering the difference, again, there's little nubs into the magazines and you can usually tell. But if that's too much of an issue, just get the original one because even you can see on the newer one, they kept the same design. So I believe this is the new standard for these magazines, which is okay. Just keep that in mind if you're going to be running this as your primary. But now to the chronograph results, which is going to be a little bit complicated. So I'll play these little like clips in from PhoneQuest, but also Wallcom. So PhoneQuest was getting an average about 89 FPS, about pretty minimal 90s to like lower 80s to high 80s, and that was PhoneQuest. But then Wallcom was averaging about 100. You could see they were kind of all over the place in his, but they were pretty high with 100. So the chronograph results is a little bit hesitant with this one, but that's just because we don't have Coop anymore to give us like a proper average, but also chronographs work differently. So you can make that adjustment on your own. But that is all the objective information I can provide on this blaster. Not in my personal opinion, which is really positive. I love the Challenger. This is a very, very good blaster. Like, I'm very shocked. Like, they finally made a proper Stryfe, and can I just compliment them real quick? This design is really cool. Like, I think the AccuSeries is my favorite design. Like, the blue, the yellow, the orange, the neon green is amazing, and it feels awesome. But I do have a few complaints. Every product reviewer has to have a complaint, because if they don't, they're not doing their job right. And I can't do my job right if I don't have a few complaints. So hear me out, because these are very minimal. I originally had 2, now I have 3. The first complaint is this. This just annoys me. Now, granted, Hasbro has said, or some sources have said, that they are working on rival attachments, which I hope is the truth, because molding this in to look like an N-Strike barrel lug and no attachments fit it is a little but it's not that terrible. Plus, hopefully they'll work on it, or our 3D printed aftermarket community is already on it. Next is this rail. This rail feels really unsupported and loose to the point where it could snap pretty easy. So that's a little bit of a weakness that I have with this blaster, but I'm not going to run a sight on this because the iron sights work just fine. And my last complaint is the mag compatibility. So for many people who do not know whether or not they're the older generation Rival mags or the newer ones are going to use this. Oh, and that's another minor little complaint. The mag orientation is different, where the flat part that usually goes forward on normal Rival blasters, this time has to go backwards. But also the older generation magazines kind of hiccup. Now, granted, yeah, that's what I thought. Now, granted, you could hold it there and it works just fine, but if you're shooting it unsupported, it'll just stop firing. And again, the solution, just make sure you're using the updated 2018 magazines, like the Pathfinder magazine that has that little locking notch to make this work. Sorry, to make it work a lot better. And that is something that is a big problem, but not that big. And now to the question to buy or not to buy. If you are a performance-oriented nerfer looking for a good rival semi-automatic blaster, yes, definitely check this out. It is pretty well balanced for what it is. Now, again, it is a little front-heavy, but you're not really going to be using this as a pistol. You're going to be using this kind of like as a little bit of a carbine, except with no stock. But that's to be a standard. But now this is where it's going to get fun, and this is why, in my opinion, I don't know exactly how to word this without showing you. So, why don't we go over to the guy in the corner and I could show you. Okay, still working out that new YouTube slide, as the mic was not happy. But to where I think this really shines is a awesome secondary. So, say if you're running around with your primary actually runs out of ammo, so it's like, oh shoot. So then like you're trying to like whisk this away, or you got to drop it for a little bit, and then you're trying to go for your sidearm, but say you can't. I'll review this blaster next week, BT dubs. But then that just one person comes along to where you are desperately needed, to where you are just like your ammo, you can't get to your sidearm, your primary is empty. Just whip this out, and it's an epic kill. So where I think this blaster shines because of this little carabiner attachment, this would be the greatest secondary. Like, I don't usually use secondary, now I might. And of course, this is just an old Nerf sling that you can get at like Goodwill or something like that. But this really is epic as a secondary, and that is where I think this blaster shines more. Yes, you could use it as a primary, but where it is right now, you can just throw that onto your side and just treat it like it's non-existent. Of course, you might want to get a little bit of a smaller mag, but if you're okay with this kind of just occasionally hooking you, it's not going to be that bad at all. Thank you so much for watching my actual review, guys. And again, there was a live stream that kind of showed it earlier, so of course that is to be, shown enough, I guess. But if you want, go check out that live stream, and now the actual review is out. Much love, blast on, and please stay tactical.